So we're on the bottom of Nun Ches Amud Beis. Skip this out of the way. Nun Ches Amud Beis. So the Mishnah had spoken about a Kohen who was Makadesh a Grusha or a Kohen Gadol with an Almana that he's not allowed to. And first there was Machlokas if she's allowed to eat Truma. Then the Mishnah ended off that if the Kohen died, so she can go back to eating her father's Truma. If she was a Bas Kohen is allowed to eat Truma, but ever since she stopped eating Truma, even though here she, according to a mayor, that she was Mikudeshes to a Kohen, so that she had to stop eating Truma at that time. But then if the husband dies or divorces her, she could go back. If there was Nisuin and she had relations with the new husband, and then she became a Halala, because there was a Chayve Lavin that Kohen Grusha the Kohen Hedyot, that there was a Bia Psula, so she became a Halala and she forever is puzzled to eat Truma. But if it was only from Erison, then she could go back. So the Gemara brings out a question over here that seems to be unrelated, and it's going to go into all sugis about the Kohen. And the next mission is going to go in also into Almana for Kohen Gadol. The halachas of last week's parsha, in Parshas Emor, that we spoke about all the halachas of Kohanim. This is going to be the sugya over here. We're going to talk about the halachas of Kohanim, who's allowed to marry, and the Kohen Gadol. But the Gemara brings in the sugya because the Gemara is going to try to bring a proof from our Mishnah to that question. Kohen Gadol shekidesh asketana u'bavra tachtav. We're going to see soon that a Kohen Gadol is not allowed to marry a widow. Besides regular Kohen Hedyot, can marry a Grusha, Halala, Zona. Also, cannot marry an Almana, even a widow. Also, it says, you should marry a virgin. And the Gemara talks about, the Mishnah coming up is going to talk about that a virgin, a real virgin, is going to be that she's not even 12 and a half. Once she's 12 and a half and she starts growing, she starts getting bigger. So then the sulim, the hymen, is not as tight as it was when she was younger. And there's a machlokes if a Kohen Gadol is allowed to marry a Bulgaris, and we're going to pass it, he's not allowed to. That a Kohen Gadol is supposed to marry a girl that's not older than 12 and a half. The Rambam says not a Ketana, not a Bulgaris, only between 12 and 12 and a half. Rashi seems to say that a Ketana is also kosher, also good, but you cannot marry a Bulgaris. You can't marry a woman who's older than 12 and a half because she's not a real Basul anymore. Of course, she's a virgin. We call it a virgin because she didn't have relations. But if the hymen would have been removed in other ways, but the Gemara is also going to call about Mukaseitz, even mechanically, if it would have been removed, that's also a question. And even a Bulgaris, that she's 12 and a half, and the fact that she started physical growth also made that the hymen is not as closed as it was originally. That's also usher for a Kohen to marry.
I want to understand something. A Kohen Gadol who's 50 years old.
Yeah, he's going to marry a girl who's 12.
Which girl's going to agree to him?
Whoever wants to be married to the Kohen Gadol.
So also, it's not a matin.
It's not so much thing, right? Right. It says that it's not by Yibum. We say that don't they make problems in your house. So the Kohen Gadol is different. The Kohen Gadol, that's what it seems. It's not a regular case. If he's married, so then he can stay married to his wife. But if he has to take a new wife, if his wife died, he has to take a new wife. She has to take a girl that's only between 12 and 12 and a half. That's what it seems to be. So here the question is that there's Kedushin and Nisuin. There's two stages. There's Kedushin, there's Erison and Nisuin. And here the question was that when he did the Kedushin, she was still of age. She was the right age. But then he didn't do Nisuin until later on. So he did Kedushin, and she was still young. She was still the right age, a Ketana, Nara. And then before Nisuin, she became a Bulgaris. Is he allowed to do that? The second stage of marriage, is he allowed to consummate the marriage, or it's too late? It's no good. She's already a Bulgaris. Mahu. That's the question. No shaykhs to us. The one is bringing it in because it's going to try to bring a right from our Mishnah. Basa Nisuin Aslina or Basa Erison Aslina? On the top of Nun Test. Do you go according to the Nisuin? If you go according to the Nisuin, so then she can't take a Bulgaris. If you go according to the Erison, so he took her when she was still of age. She was still a Nara. That's okay. That was the question. So Amalei to Nisua. So Shmuel thinks that he has a right from our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says the Samulon is Garshuman and Nisuin Psulos when the Erison Cheros. The Gemara is right away going to say that there's no connection with Chorah, but let's see what it says. That if if he had Nisuin, this person, a Grusha Kohen Hedyot, the Almana Kohen Gadol, the Mishnah says that if they had Nisuin, means they had relations, so then she can't go back anymore to eat Truma because she was a Halal, she became a Halal, she had Almana, had relations with a Kohen Gadol, so that's Chayve Lavin, and she becomes Halal, and she can't go back to eat Truma anymore, even if he would die. But Mina Erison Ksheros, if they only had Erison, so there was no relations, so then she couldn't go back. And the Gemara thinks this is a proof to our question. What's the connection? The Gemara seems to say that the Issa to take is by the Nisuin. The Nisuin is just to take, and therefore it comes out that the Nisuin is the Kobeya. And so too, if she was already a Bulgaris at the time of Nisuin, he can't take her anymore. Because it's not the Erison that's Kobeya, the marriage, it's the Nisuin. The same way that you see that she doesn't become a halala only from Nisuin. So the whole Aveiro, the mitzvah of taking the right wife, as everything is about Nisuin. But the Gemara says right away, it's not the question. I know that she doesn't become a halal only if she had relations. That's not my question. The mitzvah, the isser, that he has to take dafka a virgin, a basula, is that on the erison or the nisuin? It's not dependent on the question before the halala. Sure, she only becomes a halala if there was relations. The pasuk says by a Kohen Gadol that he should take dafka yikach. This word yikach, what does it mean he should take? My kicha. The kedushin, my kicha the kedushin binan, or kicha the nesuin binan. What is this word yikach? He has to take. He has to take a basul. He has to take a virgin. He should not take. The taking of this pasuk doesn't mean the first stage of marriage, which is kedushin, or the second one. If it's the first stage, so this case that we had, that she was still a nara at the time of kedushin, so he did well, and the isser is not on the nesuin. If you say that's on the nesuin on the second stage, so if she became a Bulgaris at that time, so it's usher. That's so. It's the more thought I had a connection to our Mishnah, the Lamaisa it doesn't. But once we're here, we're going to try to find the proof for this answer. So he said, "Amalei hanami to nisua." So you're right. It's not a right from our Mishnah, but I do have a raya. Even says Salman of Nisman Elias Kohen Gadol. What's the case if there was a Kohen Hedyot? He wasn't a Kohen Gadol. There was a Kohen Hedyot. The Kohen Hedyot is allowed to marry an almana. That's the Grush is not allowed to. And he had a Rusin. He did kedushin to a almana. And then they decided to make him the Kohen Gadol before the Nisuin. Could he take her? Could he continue taking her?
Why is it Pasha, by the way, if he's already married, he doesn't have to get divorced?
Because the issue is the loyikach. The loyikach is the issue over here. You see, the Gemara's question about the Eris and Nisuin, but surely it's the Nisuin. If he was married already, even if he's an old man and he has a wife, that's surely good. He stays with her. That's no problem. The problem is only when he's taking a wife. And the Gemara's question is,
he became a Kohen Gadol.
What?
Yikanos means he became a Kohen Gadol.
No, Nismana Elias Kohen Gadol means he was appointed. He did Eris into an almana, and then he was appointed to be a Kohen Gadol. Then a Yichnos means that he may do Nisuin. He may bring the wife in, even though she was an almana. He may. Yichnos is the psak. That in this case, the halach is that he may take her in. He may do Nisuin, even though now he's a Kohen Gadol. A Kohen Gadol is not allowed to marry an almana, but he married her already. What do you see? That the marriage has to do with the eris and not with the nisuin. So the same way over here, that since at the time of the erisin, he was allowed to take her, even though by the nisuin he's not allowed to. There's no issue for Kohen Gadol to do nisuin to almana. This is to do erisin to almana. Once she was already married to her, the nisuin the erisin happened already. There's no problem for him to take her, even though now he's a Kohen Gadol. So too, the Gemara wants the same thing in our case, that the woman, he was the Kohen Gadol, but she was Ketana, she was in good age when he took Erison, and now the more things, it's okay, the Erison is the Koveya. The same way you see over here that the Erison is Koveya, that once he took her, she's in, and even though now he became a Kohen Gadol, he's allowed to continue taking her in more to the Nisuin. So too, if she changed. He was a Kohen Gadol, but she was a Ketana, that was okay, he did the Erison, and now he wants to know if he's allowed to take her in. She's already a Bulgaris now. When he's taking her in the Nisuin, that's okay. But the Gemara says no, it's not a proof. Shana Yasam D'chsev Yikach Isha. There's a special pasuk over there to say that I don't see the mashmos of the pasuk exactly, but somehow from this pasuk Kia Musalam Meikav Meimov Yikach Isha, that over there this extra word Isha is coming to tell us even this case is good. But you can't learn out from there.
Isha means Nisuin. It means Nisuin. That means he's had.
I'm not sure what the drasha is going to be over here. I don't know what the drasha is. I really don't know what the drasha is to be marba, but it's saying that this case is okay. That the case of Dalmana, and he became a Kohen Gadol, that's okay. I don't see it much more. I don't know how you see it. But the Gemara is saying that's not enough to learn to our case. It's not the same. I would just put this in parentheses for a second, and we'll continue with the Gemara. But this, I think, should be like a side kasha, and the answer is going to be here, till here. Then we're going to continue. But the Gemara so far said that there's a special pasuk over there, but you have the pasuk over here. The pasuk over there that the Kohen Gadol who's already mitares to an almana can take her in. That's a pasuk yikach isha, but it's not a proof to here. The Gemara is the kasha chanam b'ksiv isha. And the answer is achas v'lo shtayim. There are two ways to learn this line. Rashi seems to learn that for the same pasuk, you could also learn this other drasha from the same pasuk. From the same pasuk, Isha Yikach Isha. Why not learn this also?
Learn what?
Learn this pasuk. This case of the woman the Ketana who became a Bogeres. The same way you said from this pasuk Yikach Isha. You learned that if the Kohen became a Kohen Gadol, he could continue taking her, even though now he's a Kohen Gadol. So to learn that if the woman changed, she was a Ketana, and now she became a Bogeres before the Nisuin, also learn out that he should be able to take her. And the Gemara answers, Achas v'lo shtayim. You're only entitled to learn out one drasha and not both. According to Rashi, the question was that you have the same pasuk, you have a pasuk for that. The Gemara says, no, only one drasha, you can't learn two drashas. It's not the regular terminology the Gemara would say, Achas v'lo shtayim, but that's how Rashi learns that you're only entitled to learn one drasha. Now the question is, you have a choice of two drashas. How do you know which is the one to do? You want to learn from this pasuk, Yikach Isha, you either want to learn out that if the Kohen became a Kohen Gadol, he could continue taking her in, even though he's a Kohen Gadol now. Or the other choice would be that he stayed the same and she changed. That he stayed the Kohen, he was a Kohen Gadol before, and she became from a Ketana to a Bogeres. So how do you know? Umar is, how do you know which one to darshan? If she changed, it isn't the same woman anymore. If she became from a Ketana to a Bogeres, she's not the same. And there's a mashmos in the pasuk that the same woman. So if he changed, he's allowed to take her in. She was a almana and he was a Kohen. He did Erisin, now he became a Kohen Gadol, he's allowed to take it. That's what the pasuk is coming to be marba. But the case where the woman changed because she became from a Ketana to a Bogeres. What?
Gufa is the woman herself.
Right. Her body changed. Here her body changed, here her body didn't change. And that's the end of the Gemara. So the Gemara doesn't know the answer. The Gemara does know this halacha, that if the Kohen became a Kohen Gadol, he's allowed to continue taking her. But the question we started with, we don't have an answer. If she was a Ketana and then she became a Bogeres before they didn't assume, we don't know if he's allowed to take her. That's the end of the Gemara, and it remains a suffix. And the Rambam says the Chatchili shouldn't take her. If he took her, he doesn't have to divorce her. That's what do you do in the case of a suffix?
Because it's sort of
but we don't know. We don't know.
proofs on both sides.
What is that?
We've got rayas on both sides.
No, we have no raya. We have no raya. We try to bring two rayas, then we don't.
Okay,
At the end of it, we don't know.
I mean, they equal each other out.
We don't know. We just say we don't know.
Okay.
No, there's no right. Each right, the Gemara bought, the Gemara refuted. So we don't know. It's not a right each side. There's no right either side. We don't have a right. We have no right. So we don't know. So we say we don't.
Everything.
We write down the rights and we don't know. First, the Gemara thought it had a right that you go with the Nesuin. Then the Gemara brought a right going to Erison. And both of them, the Gemara says it's not a raya. You do it. This thing is true that if the Kohen became a Kohen Gadol, he may take her in. But if she changed, then he may not take her in. There's a very interesting challenge. The Rambam learns different challenges in this one line in the parentheses here that I made. So the Rambam learns difference. The Gemara has the kasha that there's another pasuk of Isha. There's another pasuk of Isha. There's two times it says. How does it go over there? And it also says it says two times the word, and the kasha was that you have another time it has two psukim, and achas v'lo shtayim, the Gemara answers not like Rashi learns that it means one drasha, not two drashas. Achas v'lo shtayim is the drasha. Achas v'lo shtayim is.
I also thought it's a very strange lashon.
Yes.
It's one drush. It's such a lashon of one drush.
Right. So I have written down that in Daf Samach it's going to be the same time, but that means like Rashi. So we'll get to it. But usually it's not. Usually it's not the way the Gemara would say. The Gemara would say you used it already or used it up for one. But the Rashi Rambam learns that this is a drasha. Achas v'lo shtayim means that the Kohen Gadol may only have one wife. It's a new drasha.
Not the drushes themselves, but
that is the drasha. The drasha is that the Kohen Gadol may only have one wife. Right, but in Yuma we had differently. In Yuma we said that in Yom Kippur, only buys for lo shtei batim and Yom Kippur, and it's even a kasha. Here it's mashma that the Kohen Gadol is never allowed to have two wives. It's mashma only in Yom Kippur.
Isha means
singular, and only one wife. It comes out that his Kohen Gadol is only allowed to have one wife. According to this drasha, there's a new halacha that Kohen Gadol only can have one wife. They ask a kasha, that's to point out. They ask a kasha, someone pointed out. It says in Divrei Yomim by Yehoyada. Yehoyada was the Kohen Gadol. And over there, he's the one who saved Yoash. Yoash was the one who was all the children, all the what's her name? Asalia. She killed out all her grandchildren to take over the kingship. She became the queen, and she killed out. And over there it says that the Kohen Gadol saved the one sole survivor. He said, and from birth, and they hid him away until he was 7 years old. Then they made him the king. The whole story about Yehoyada. Over there in Divrei Yomim. Very interesting. This is not the way we usually do, but it's so interesting that I'd like to share with everybody. Divrei Yomim Beis Perek. Did I write it down? Eric base maybe. 1 second.
Whose
Dibra
dress is
Yom
this that
Beis.
says it means one?
The Rambam says that's Pshat the Gemara.
Uh,
The Rambam says that's Pshat the Gemara over here.
Okay.
That Achas Lo Shtayim is only one wife, and that's how he passes that a Kohen Gadol is only allowed to have one wife. Here it's in Perek, the Divrei Yamim Beis, Divrei Yamim Chronicles 2, Perek 24, Pasuk 3. Before that, it says that Yoash was 7 years old when he became king, and he did good in the eyes of Hashem as long as Yehoyada was leading him. Then it says, "Vayisa lo Yehoyada nashim shtayim, vayolad b'nim ubanos." The simple reading of the pasuk means Yehoyada took 2 wives. Yehoyada was the Kohen Gadol. Kasha. The Rambam says that a Kohen Gadol only allowed to have 1 wife. It says that's from Nagamara. Divrei Yamim 2, Perek 24, pasuk 3. Over there it says Yehoyada had 2 wives. Vayisa lo Yehoyada nashim shtayim. So that's the kasha.
Okay, I can bring it right from the Gemara and Yuma. You got to, because the Mekadosh too and Mekadosh.
I think so. Yeah, but the Rambam
That's the right you said.
yeah. But the Rambam seems to say that our Gemara learns only 1 wife. That's how he paskins. So some learn the Meretz Chias. He says in the name of Rabbi Zalman from Volozhin that Vayisa lo Yehoyada Shnashim Shtayim means that Yehoyada married to Yoash 2 wives, not like Chassan Gemach. It doesn't mean that he's getting married. It means he's making chasna. It means so it means that he married off Yehoyada 2 wives. Interesting. But that's the Rambam Paskins that a Kohen Gadol is only allowed to have 1 wife. That's the end of the sugya, and we continue. So the way it came in so far was only Yaakov. We only brought this whole sugya because we have the Mishnah before. We thought it was a riot. Then there comes out it's not a riot. That the halala only becomes from the Nesuin, but we want to know the issue of taking the mitzvah or the issue. They has to have dafka virgin. Is it the Erison and the Nesuin? And we don't know. It comes out that the Kohen Gadol, if he was only a Kohen, that comes out that for sure he could if he made this Erison to a almana, he could take her in. But as far as the woman would change, maybe not. Next Mishnah. I don't know how the suki is coming over here. It has nothing to do with yevamos. I'm not sure why we're veering from yevamos on some cruise that I don't know how we're going further and further. I'm not sure how it comes in. Kohen Gadol lo yisa almana be'ema almana min Erison be'et almana min anesuin. The Allah is that Kohen Gadol is not allowed to marry a widow. What if she's only a widow from Erison? It means that her first husband only was Mekadesher, and they didn't consummate the marriage, and then he died. Is that also called an almana? Maybe it's only an almana after he was nesuin. Maybe. So Mishnah says no. Even if she only was Erison, only if there was only the Kedushin, and the husband died, that's also called an almana. The Kohen Gadol is not allowed to take her. She's a virgin. She's a virgin that she never had relations with the first husband. But once there was Kedushin, she's not allowed to marry the Kohen Gadol, even if the husband would die. The lo yisas ha-bogeres. Now, this is why we spoke about. Is a Kohen Gadol allowed to marry a bogeres? She's not a complete virgin, even though she had no relations. But halachically, maybe it's not called a full virgin anymore. We'll see soon that the older she gets, so then the hymen is not as closed as it was before. She's not as much called a virgin. So Tanakama says that's how we pass. She's not allowed to marry a bogeres. The Kohen Gadol has to only marry some girl that's less than 12 and a half years old. He's only allowed to marry a girl that's less than 12 and a half. Rambam says between 12 and 12 and a half. Rambam says Ketana also not.
Once a bogeres is not considered a virgin.
As far as a Kohen Gadol, as far as whatever else is it relevant to. But over here, that's a Kohen Gadol has to marry a virgin. The pasuk is coming to say complete virgin. Mamash a virgin that is would be less than 12 and a half years old. Rabbi Shimon Machshivin bogeres. We're going to see the Rosh tell that he could, but we pass like Tanakam that he may not. For Loisa Mukaseitz. Mukaseitz means, the word literally means hit with a stick. That means that mechanically, it might have been some instrument, whatever it might be, that the hymen was removed, not with a cohibition, just with some kind of a tool. Also, a Kohen Gadol is not allowed to marry. She's also not called a basula. So basula doesn't only mean that from relations she lost her virginity. Even as long as she's missing the basulim, that's also it comes out. I think of Lezer Shimon are talking. It's not clear if these words are in the Mishnah or not. We're going to have something about it on Amud Beis. I'm not sure if you have the gears here or not, but it seems that the Rabbi Lezer Shimon are the ones who are talking, and that's how we pass it also. Okay, so we have what do we have so far? The first part of the Mishnah is 2 Mishnahs or 3 Mishnahs. The first halacha was about marrying an almana who's only an almana from Erison. That's also considered an almana, and the Kohen Gadol will not be allowed to take her. The next law was machlokes if he's not a married Bulgaris. Tanakama or Rav Meir says not, and Rav Elazar Shimon say yes. It also talks about a mukaseitz that if the Basulim were removed mechanically, not by any kind of a Maisa Bia, also he's not allowed to marry her. That's also not called a virgin.
When the third base of Mikdash
Will be built
soon in our days,
Amen.
there will be a Kohen Gadol.
Surely.
So it seems highly unlikely that there'll be a Kohen Gadol he already will have been married to
That's
someone
good.
who was not a Bulgaris.
He was married.
Who was a Bulgaris, excuse me.
It's fine. That's okay.
Because
He got married
Yikach,
already.
Shalui.
He got married already. He can become a Kohen Gadol after he's married. There's no issue for he doesn't have to divorce his
wife.
wife.
Kohen Gadol if he's not married.
Again, I'm not sure. I'm not following.
I
The
thought
base
the Kohen
is
Gadol
going to
has
be built.
marry
and We're
someone
going to
who's-
marry. We're going to appoint him as a Kohen Gadol. Is he married or is he not married? If he's married, it's fine. Stays married.
If he's married, it's fine. Doesn't matter who he married.
If he
It doesn't
right,
matter if he married a Bulgaris.
right, he might have married also an almana. He's a Kohen, so he couldn't marry a grusha, but he married an almana. That's fine. But he could stay married.
I see. But
You
if
can't
we're
marry
going to
divorcee.
appoint a single person, a single man,
If he's not married, he's single, and now he's a Kohen Gadol. So then he's not going to be. He only can marry a 12-year-old girl.
From that point on.
It's
even if his wife died or he never got married.
Right,
Whatever the
right.
case be.
And if you want to appoint him a Kohen Gadol, he'll say, "Please wait." I think he'll say, "Please wait." He'll get married,
To a Bulgaris, and then
and then he'll get to become
and
Kohen Gadol.
then appoint.
And that'd be the shadow. You have to get married, just everything.
Right. And we paskin that the Gemara said a second ago that it's good if there was Erison and then he became a Kohen Gadol, he also could continue taking her in. That also was good.
I see. Thank you very much.
Okay, Tan Rabbanan. We go into this point that Almana, even Hamdav, you said something I missed it
He obviously couldn't marry a divorcee.
because he's a Kohen, even though he's not a Kohen Gadol, he's a Kohen. Tan Rabbanan. Almana lo yikaf. It says in the pasuk that a Kohen Gadol may not take a widow. Ben Almana ben Erison, Ben Almana ben Anasu. Same as our Mishnah said, that even if she's only a widow from Erison, that she never had relations with the first husband and he died, also it's also for the Kohen Gadol to take her. Pshita. Why is it a chiddush? The Gemara doesn't see a chiddush in that. If it says a widow is also, so she's a widow. After he gives her the ring, so she's married, and if he dies, so she's a widow. Why is there a chiddush that even Almana ben Erison is also to a Kohen Gadol? You might think you're not Xer Shafa from Tamar. Over there, it calls her an Almana. Shvi Almana Beis Avich. That over there is talking about Tamar, and that was after she was married already to already heir and Onan. She was after Nisuin. And over there was Benan Nisuin. Afkan Benan Nisuin. You might think that the pasuk Xer Sakasam, that Almana only means from Nisuin, and therefore the Isser for a Kohen Gadol taken Almana would only be if she was already Nisuin, but it only was Erison, not. Kamash Malan, that it's not so, and even Almana from Erison also is also to marry a Kohen Gadol. Maybe so. Once you told us this new drasha, so maybe you're right. Maybe it's taka mutter to take an Almana from Erison. No, Dumi de Grusha, Ma Grusha, Beim and Anasun, Beim and Erison, Almana, Beim and Erison, Beim and Anasun. It says together in the pasuk both of them. You cannot take a divorcee and you cannot take a widow. So by divorcee, the Gemara has no question that it even means only from Erison. Even if she only got divorced after the kedushin before the nisuin, there's pasha that is called divorced woman, and the Kohen Gadol is asked to marry her. So since the pasuk puts it all together, the almana also is even from Erison alone, and you don't learn that from Tamar. So that's the halacha that the Kohen Gadol is not allowed to marry a widow or a divorcee, any Kohen, and even if it's only from Erison, not from the nisuin, the first husband died before he did nisuin. Also, she's called a widow, and the Kohen Gadol is not allowed to marry her. The Gemara was bothered that it goes without saying. So the Gemara said a chiddush. You might have thought you learned that from Talmud, Kamash one that you don't. Next again. Below Yisrael Asal Bulgaris. Machlokes in the Mishnah, if a Kohen Gadol is not to marry a Bulgaris because she's not a full virgin. Of course, it's not what we call a virgin. We call a virgin someone who didn't have relations is called a virgin. But the hymen, if it was somewhat not as closed as it was originally, that's also a question. And the Gemara is going to go into that. How do you learn it? The Psukim. Tan Rabbana. Rav Meir says that when she becomes a Bulgaris, age 12 and a half, so the Basulim, the hymen is not so closed, and therefore she's not a complete Bulgaris, and the pasuk is coming to exclude her, that the Kohen Gadol is also not allowed to marry her. The word Kalula literally means that there's no more, as if the whole hymen was removed. So he says it doesn't mean that. The Gemara is going to say right away that doesn't mean there's no hymen, but it just means that it's not as much as it was before. So Rav Meir says that's also not enough for a Kohen Gadol to marry, a Kohen Gadol may not marry her. Rav Elazar, Rav Shimon, Machshirin, Bogeres, and they said it is kosher. And the Gemara is going to go into the drushes. We'll have a few lines of drush over here. Is it mutter? Are we going to exclude also a Bogeres or not? The Mike Mifli, what are they arguing about? Rav Meir Sava Besula, Filu Mixas Besulim, Mashma, Besula, Adi Kukala Besulim. The pasuk says, "V'hu isha bivsula." Let's try to highlight the pasuk just to get the bivsula. The pasuk says, "Isha bivsula." V'hu isha bivsula yikar. That's just the pasuk. V'hu isha bivsula yikar. That's the pasuk. And the word bivsula has a lot of letters. It could have said bivsula. Then it says bivsula, bivsula. The Gemara sees three drushes in this pasuk. The simple word would have been bivsula. Isha bivsula yikar. Means a virgin. It says bivsulaha, her virginity, and bivsula, in her virginity. So the Gemara is going to have room for, besides the Pashup Shat, it's going to have also two more drushes. And Rav Meir says that if it would have said Besula alone, if it would have said Besula, try to highlight that also. Watch Rav Meir is joshing over here. Rav Meir says that if it would have said Besula alone, it would have meant Afilu Mixas Besula Mashma. That would have meant as long as she's somewhat a Besula, and a Bogeres would have been good. But since it says Besula, since it says more than that, it says even Besula, it's come to add on to more than the Pashup Shat. The Pashup word Besula would have meant as long as she's somewhat a Besula. And the word Besula is coming to emphasize more than we said till now. I'm just going to put this in parentheses because it's not our subject right now, and we'll come back to it in a second. The Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon Savri, they're going to say a little different. Let's put them also in some kind of a highlight. They also have the word Besula and Besula, but they say the opposite. They say that Besula, that would have meant Besula Shlema Mashma, the opposite of Rav Meir. What does the word Besula alone mean? Rav Meir said Besula alone would have meant somewhat of a Besula. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon say Besula is mashma, complete Besula, and that would have said Bogeres is not good. And the word Besula is also coming to change the meaning of the Besula. So Mela, if you mix this Besula, so they come out the difference, opposite. Each one says that the simple, it comes out the opposite of what the simple word would have meant. Rabbi Meir says Besula would have meant that a Bogeres is good, and Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon says the word Besula would have meant that a Bogeres is not good. But according to each one, the word Besula comes to exclude from the word Besula. Whatever that would have meant, this means the opposite. So it comes out, according to Rav Meir, Besula would have meant even a Bogeres is good, Besula says a Bogeres is not good. According to Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, Besula would have meant that a Besula is, that a Bogeres is not good. The word Besula says a Bogeres is good. And that's the machlokes. That's the machlokes. They weren't finished. As far as we're concerned, as far as a Bogeres, the machlokes, if it's Kohen Gadol's not to marry her or not, this is the machlokes, Rav Meir against Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, and each one learns from the extra word of Besulaha that's coming to exclude lafuke from the simple word about Besula. What does Besula mean? That's what they're arguing about. And here also we have another parentheses, which is in sync together with the drasha before. Because besides having Besula and Besula, it also says Bivsula. And that's going to be another drasha, which is not relevant to our subject, L'chora. Our subject already finished, but there's also a word, Biv, wrong one, sorry. Take that out. This one over here, we'll put, this is his drasha of Bivsula, and this is going to be the drasha before of Rav Meir, Bivsula. He also has an opinion. And both of them are saying that the third drasha, Bivsula, the extra base, everyone says it's coming to tell you the din of Shalok Kedarka. What if there was a Bia Shalok Kedarka? Means that it wasn't a vaginal relation, it was rectal. So that's going to be the question if that also makes her puzzle to marry a Kohen Gadol. If that also takes away from her virginity a bit. The fact that she had a bia, even though it was Shalok Kedarka. And here it's going to be the opposite. Rav Meir is the one who said that he cannot marry a Bogeres. Bivsula, Kedarka in Shalok Kedarka lo. She only becomes possible if it was a regular bia, but if it's Shalok Kedarka, Rav Meir is going to be Mekel. And Rabbi Elazar is the opposite. He says that word Bivsula, you call Bivsula Kayam and Ben Kedarka Ben Shalok Kedarka. According to Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, on the contrary, that if she had a bia Shalok Kedarka, she's possible to marry Kohen Gadol. So it comes out that whatever one is Mekel, he's marked for another one. But Meir says that a Kohen Gadol cannot marry a Bogeres, but he could marry a woman who had a bia Shalok Kedarka. That doesn't take away her virginity. And Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon is the opposite, that he may marry a Bogeres, but he may not marry a woman who had a bia Shalok Kedarka. So we started off the Mishnah because of Bogeres. That's how we got into this. But once we get into the parentheses, now the rest of the sugya now is going to be on the issue of shloka darka. So the parentheses now is becoming the main sugya. Is a Kohen Gadol allowed to marry a woman who had relations shloka darka? That's more or less the end of that sugya. And now we're going into the sugya of shloka darka. And
It
before,
doesn't make sense this woman was married or not was married.
meaning,
Her husband was like a back or someone else.
if it has a husband, so then there's nothing to talk about. She's going to be an almana or a grusha.
Ah.
There's talking about a Kohen Gadol now. So the relations, so she's not almana, she's not a grusha, so she's not a zona either. That also would have been us. So then it says, what's the basula? That is, besides all that, it's necessary that the woman should be a basula. Does this take away from her virginity? So one issue was if she became a bogeres, machlokis, Rav Meir's machmir, Rav Elazar Shimon Ameko, he passed like Rav Meir. And the other issue is if she had to be a shloka darka, does that take away her virginity? Also machlokis, but the opposite machlokis. Rav Meir is going to say that it's mutter, and Rav Elazar Shimon are going to say that it's asa. Everybody's good with that? Now the Gemara starts seemingly a new sugya, but now we're going into shloka darka. The rest of the sugya is going to be on shloka darka now. I'm Rav Yudah Rav. Well, let's just highlight him also to get our bearings over here. I'm Rav Yudah Rav. Niva shloka darka psula lakuna. So he's going into the sugya of niva shloka darka, and he says he cannot. And the Gemara means it doesn't mean a Kohen Hedin, it means a Kohen Gadol. A Kohen Hedin doesn't have this issue about the virgin, but a Kohen Gadol does. The Gemara doesn't say the word, but that's what it means. That, so he just took sides. He just took sides. That Rav Elazar Shimon is the one who said that it's a ben kedaka ben shelo kedaka. Rav seems to paskin like Rav Elazar Shimon against Rav Meir. Rav Meir says that a Kohen Gadol would be able to marry a woman who had relations shelo kedaka. Masiv Rava. A very interesting question. Masiv Rava. Rava asked the kasha on Rav. It says in the pasuk, "Velosi yel isha." This is talking about a man who raped a woman. So nothing to do with the Kohen Gadol, a regular man. He raped a woman. So it says, besides that, he has to pay a fine. Also, he has to take her as a wife if she wants to marry him. That he has to take her as a wife.
I can never divorce.
I can never divorce her. Velosi yel isha. So he should know that if he's raping somebody, he should know that it's not a one-time thing. He might get stuck with her as a wife, and he won't be able to divorce her. Velosi yel isha. So now the question is a Kohen Gadol. Of course, we hope that such a case will never happen to anybody. Showing out the Kohen Gadol shouldn't be somebody who's raping a girl. But Allah talks about it. What would be the Allah if a Kohen Gadol raped a woman? It has to be that the woman is somebody that he's allowed to marry. If it's a issa for her to marry her, so this mitzvah that ma'anes, that someone who raped has to take her as a wife, is not going to override the issa that he's not allowed to marry her. So if the Kohen Gadol would have raped a woman, and she happens to be an almana, or if a Kohen Hedid would have raped a woman who happens to be a grusha b'chalutza, so he doesn't marry her, even though he raped her.
If a Kohen Gadol rapes a woman, we don't fire him?
I think that we'll punish him, but I technically not. Of course, he has to do tshuva if he's still an avarian or not.
He's a public figure, he's a public
Yeah.
rabbi.
The halacha would be just the other kind of averus also. So we give him malchus. If he's chayav malchus, he's chayav malchus like anybody else, and then he goes back to office again. And
It's huge fish, no? Because it's
could
he's
be.
not stam.
Yeah, he's not stam
He's like
somebody.
a
Yeah. Yeah. It could be that Bezin will take measures, but technical halacha, it doesn't say that he loses his position because of that. Of course, if he continues doing averas, of course we stop him. But if he did a one-time avera and he did tshuva and he's chayav some kind of punishment, he gets the punishment like anybody else. There's nothing above the law. It means everybody else, the Kohen Gadol, the king also, if he did averas, chayav malchus, we give him malchus also. There are some difficulties in that, and there was historically some difficulties with that the king, if he was not submissive to the Bezdin, so then he had power. But technically, the king, the Kohen Gadol, is also chayav a punishment like anybody else. But anyway, technically, we have a law here that somebody who rapes would be chayav to marry her. But if there's issa, because technically he's not allowed to marry her, there's a chayav lavin, so then he doesn't marry her. But the Gemara is asking like the Gemara's. There's a question: why does it say that a Kohen Gadol can, if she's an almana, marry her? Why does she not almana? Any woman that he raped, now she's a beula. She's not a virgin anymore because of him. Even though he's the one who made her into beula, but she's not a virgin. So it would be also for her to take any time that a Kohen rapes somebody. It's always also for her to marry him to marry her.
Because she's no longer.
Because besides having almana, zona, halal, it also says basula. He has to have a basula. She's not a basula. It's true. He's the one who made her not a basula. But that's also what he's not allowed to marry a woman, even if he made her beula. He's the one who had relations with her. So why does the Brisa say Yes.
Once he does pee on her, isn't he married to her?
No, he didn't do it for marriage. He did it as nus. He didn't do it for marriage.
What if he did, let's say he doesn't ask women, he does, and he jumps on her and.
That's a rape. She's not. They're not married. They're not married. Sure. Every nus is not marriage. Only by Yibum, we talked about Yibum, that if once it's already the brother's wife, and then there's a Zika, and then even but he didn't have any das also. He also didn't know what he's doing. She didn't know what they're doing also, unless they're sleeping. We had that more before. But here it's talking about that the Kohen Gadol raped the woman, and even if she's not an almana, but he made her, she shouldn't be a basul anymore. So that should be included in the law that he's not allowed to take her as a wife. So why does the Bryce go out of his way to find the case that she's an almana? Here it says, then he doesn't take her for a wife. Even without that, he shouldn't be able to take her for a wife because she's a bula. Hechidami. So he wasn't trying to find a case that she would be a basula, even though he had relations with her. How could that be? Then he would be able to marry her because she's still basula, which in essence is asking that this was the kasha that you say
because
you
we
see
said that Shalom Kedarka is still considered.
it's considered puzzle. She's puzzle. So I've said puzzle, which is really a Lezer Rab Shimon. That was a Lezer Rab Shimon. Now the kasha not such a kasha like the was going to say right away because Rav is just passing one of two prices. There's a machlokas. Before we said the two parentheses, we said there's a machlokas if a shloka darka is puzzle or May says kasha and Rav Lezer Rab Shimon say puzzle. So if you found the brisa here, this brisa happens to hold that it's kosher, so it's not a kasha in anybody. That's the other. That's Rav Meir. Rav Meir holds that it's kosher. It's not a pasuk. It's a brisa. So the answer is simple. Amud Beis. Mani Rav Meir. That's not a kasha. This Tana holds like a Meir. You're right. It's true. According to Rav Lezer and Rav Shimon, then it wouldn't have said this. It would have said that any time that a Kohen Gadol would have raped a woman, he doesn't take her because she's a bula, because he holds that even there's no case, even Kedarka, Shlo Kedarka, in any case, she's going to be a bula, and the Kohen Gadol is not allowed to marry her. This Bryce is Rav Meir talking, and he holds that Shlo Kedarka is still called a basula. So he had to say that in a case where with Shlo Kedarka, if she's an almana, he's not allowed to take her. So it's not a kasha and Rav, it's a machlokes Tanam, and he does paskins the other way. The Rav Talmud Kabbalah. Now the words Rav Talmud Kabbalah usually just means that he's saying according to like Rav Pasnak Kabbalah and this then. But the Gemara takes it to mean that Rabbi Elazar is talking. Now, not only Rav is saying he passed like Rabbi Elazar, but he's saying that I'm saying it in the name of Rabbi Elazar, as if to say. And the Gemara has another problem with that now. Another machlokas, so another opinion of Rabbi Elazar personally, nothing to do with each other. This one issue about the Bia Shlo Kedarka, that Rabbi Elazar and Shimon hold that she's usher to a Kohen Gadol because she's not a Basul anymore. And there's another issue Rabbi Elazar says which has no shaykhus, not interdependent. But since Rabbi Elazar is the author, the Gemara thinks that he's the one who's talking now, and he has to be in consistency with himself. The pasuk talks about a zona. A zona is also for a Kohen Hediot, a Kohen Gadol. A Kohen Hediot also is not, he can marry a Isha Grusha B'Chalala Zona. There are three women that a Kohen Hediot is not allowed to marry, and the Kohen Gadol is more, even Almana also not. But the three are a Grusha, Zona, Chalala. What's a zona? That's the question. What's called a zona? What's the definition of a zona? So Rabbi Elazar is machmir, and he says that even a panuya, he's not married, she's not married, a boy and a girl, they have relations, that makes her into a zona. We don't pass like that. Shalom Hashem, not for the purpose of marriage. If they want to get married, wonderful. It's nice chasana, good. But if they have relations not for the purpose of marriage, just for sinners, that's what makes her a zona. And now a Kohen Hedi is not allowed to marry her. That makes her an official zona. That Kohen Hedi is also to marry her. And I think we're pass like this, that does make us. We had the sugi before Rashi put down only some kind of an avera. If it was an avera, I mean, this also is not proper, but it's not a chayvi asay, it's not a chayvi lovin, so that doesn't make her into a zona. But Rabbi Elazar holds personally that she does become a zona.
Yeah,
so
for a Kohen Hedger.
Even for a Kohen Hedger is also. So that's the most kasha over here. So this case, we had a case over here that somebody raped. So what's the case? That a Kohen Gadol is also. Every rape, according to Rabbi Elazar, makes her into a zona. Not only a Kohen Gadol, even a Kohen Hedger makes her. We shouldn't be allowed to marry her. So again, forget about Almana. She's a zona. What's the case that this Bryce has said? if Rabbi Lezer is talking, really Rabbi is talking, but we're looking at it as if Rabbi Lezer is talking. Rabbi Lezer wouldn't say these words. Rabbi Lezer would say that the case of Lo Siya Isha, that he cannot marry her if he raped her is because she's an almana, even if she wouldn't be an almana. The fact that they had relations makes her into a zona. Even if he's kosher and she's kosher, but they're not married and they didn't do it for marriage, so she becomes a zona. So this words wouldn't make sense according to Rabbi Lezer personally. Amar Rav Yosef, he go so the Gemara, okay, the Gemara, of course, the case is not going to be, really crazy cases, but the Gemara doesn't bother as long as technically we're going to get a shot in the brisa. Amar Rav Yosef, he goes to Nivala lebehema. The Hasam mishum beula ika mishum zona leka. I could find you a case that she'll be won't be a zona, but she will be a beula. I'll find you a case. If she had relations with an animal, well, of course, there's a chayiv skila. It's a chayiv mises bezdin if someone has relations with an animal. Here, the case could be it wasn't willingly. The Gemara is going to say soon a case that happened against her will. But if she had relations with an animal, so it's going to make her into a beula, and she's not going to be a zona because the Gemara is going to say soon that ain't znus l'behema means that the relations that an animal has with a human is not called znus. We're looking for a case that is going to be not a zona, but it's only going to be also to a kohen gadol. She'll be considered a bula, but it won't be considered a zona.
I have missed her.
Yes, the Gemara is going to say soon a case that the animal jumped on her. It wasn't. She's not chayiv skila. But the question is that she become a zona. So the relation with the animal does not call the zona. Upon Yabu is a zona, but an animal relation is not considered a zona. But is she considered a bula? The Gemara thinks that this would be considered a bula. Shalok kedarka. We're talking about a shalok kedarka. Okay. The hasa mishum bula ikam mishum zona leka. That's what Rav Yosef said. But Rabbi said, no, it's not true. It's not considered a bula either then. If you say, it doesn't make her into a zona, then it's not considered a bia that should make her not a virgin. It'll be like something mechanical. The Gemara is going to say right away, the same thing called the mukaseis, like we said, that a mukaseis, even if it would have been mechanical with an instrument that they removed the basulim, that's all it's going to be. It's not going to be considered something that's considered a bia. It's not considered a relation. So therefore, and what are you going to say? You might say that this Tana holds that a mukaseitz also makes a person. We said in the Mishnah, in brackets, said in the Mishnah that there's an opinion that says that a mukaseitz also is possible to a kohen. If the kohen gadol, you're right, kohen gadol. That's not called the basul anymore, which we could talk about. But the other Mishnah talk about a Bulgaria, spoke about a mukaseitz. So if you say that a mukaseitz is a problem, now mukaseitz is a machlokes. If mukaseitz is kosher or not. Rashi seems to say at this point, the Gemara is going to say that mukaseitz, where's the Rashi over here? Yeah, here goes that you're going to say, they're going quote to Madam, it says mukaseitz is not good, like it says, lo yisas mukaseitz. And you're going to say that a mukaseitz, shalok kedarka pasla. Maybe he's coming to say that even if she was a mukaseitz, shalok kedarka. That means that the whole sugya we spoke about was to talk about shalok kedarka. That was the sugya number 1. And now we're going to say that the case was a behema, which is not considered znus, but it's not worse than a mukaseitz. The Gemara says that you can't say that a mukaseitz shalok kedarka makes it possible. That's no one's going to say. Even though we had a sugya about a mukaseitz, we had a sugya about shalok kedarka. Again, mukaseitz means that the basulim were removed mechanically. Eitz, a piece of wood, an instrument, and a shalok kedarka means that there was a relations that was not in the vagina, it wasn't the rectum. But both of them together surely is not a problem. It means if there would have been only something mechanical in the rectum, that surely doesn't make it considered not a beula. Like the Gemara says, al deitzror means that every time that a person is cleaning themselves from in the stone, and nowadays they have toilet paper. In those days you use a stone. So you're going to say that every woman is going to become asur to a kohen because she's a beula. Surely that doesn't take. Even if it might assume it somehow, but it's not enough to make her asur to a kohen. That can be. So we're looking for a case. Where's that case that someone is going to be not a zona, but still a beula? Every time she's a beula, she's always going to be a zona. We just tried that. It didn't work. Because we said ain't znus l'behema, and if ain't znus l'behema, then it's not a beula either. That's the end of the Gemara. What does bema enes mean? Bema enes means that there was a young girl that had no father, and there's nobody to marry her off. And the rights only a father can marry off a young girl. But there is a din that mid the Rabbanan, she could get married, her brother, her mother, she herself, she can get married. It's Kedushin Rabbanan. And that's not closeness. She's married on a Kedushin Rabbanan, she's married. But if she wants to terminate it, she doesn't need to get. She just says, I don't want, I refuse, I want to leave. She leaves, then it's all
That's
over.
at 13 or at any age?
No, only before 12, when
Before
she's still a
12.
Tana. So how about such a girl?
Lumanus is always.
Yeah, once she's a
refused
Gedola, before she becomes an
otherwise it's
adult.
implied that she
That
accepted.
once she accepted, then she continued being married even after she was an adult. Now
fully
she's already a bardas, and she accepted the marriage and she's married. But she could refuse as long as she's a Ketana. So here the case would be, here we found the case that this girl was married, Kedushin Rabbana, she had relations with her husband, it's not called znus. And when she does miyun, so she's a bu'ula, and she was not a zona. We found the case. The case that the Torah talks about that she's a bu'ula and not almana, grusha, zona. What's the case? What's the case of a bu'ula who's not almana, grusha, zona? One of the three. If she's a bu'ula, she had relations. If she had relations, then how did she lose her first husband? Either with almana, grusha, either he died or he divorced her, or the whole thing was business. And that's anyway also. So what do you have to have a bu'ula for? So we found the case that she was mama enes, that when he had relations, it was a kosher relation. She was married with Rabbanan, it's not called a zona. And then when she does miyun, then the whole marriage is off retroactively. She's not called a grusha, she's not called an almana. And then the Kohen's not allowed to marry her because she's a bu'ula.
Kohen Gadol is not allowed.
Kohen Gadol's not allowed to marry her because she's a bu'ula. We found the case. We looked for a case, we found the case. Even if you don't get in Shalokadaka, you don't have to get anything like that, the regular bia, but she's a bu'ula, but she's not a zona.
That's what Rabbi Zeir.
Right, and that's the end of that sugya. And now the Gemara goes a little bit further to go back to what we know already, that we said before, that ain't nus lebehema, that relations to behema doesn't make her into a zona. That if she had relations with an animal, even though it's chayiv skila, but she's not, but she didn't do it for skila, and even still, even if she's chayiv skila, for every reason that she's not going to be chayiv skila, she's kosher to a kohen. It's not called that she's a zona. She's not considered a zona. Tani Namayachi, yeah, it speaks out that about skila. If she had relations with someone who's not human, which means an animal, even though it's a burial which is punishable by owning, which is the worst kind of death penalty, but she's still kosher lakuna, doesn't make her into a zona. And before we said it doesn't make her into bu'ula either, the Gemara top that is no difference than bia, so it's not called the bu'ula either. She's married, kosher to marry a kohen gadol even. No, to a animal, human. So kosher lakuna is not called znus, and it's not called a bu'ula, and she's a still. He also have dimi yomar ma'isa b'riva achash be'iselo, and name of a place. Shows them mechabedes as a bias. B'riva kill of kufri me'achareha b'chshir Rabbi lakuna. Such a story happened. There was a place called the Selo, I don't know where that is, and she was sweeping the house, and a dog, a color of kufri, it's like a big dog, some kind of a German shepherd, like a big dog, that he Rava means that he had relations with her from behind. And Rebbe said she's still kosher lakuna, that even though the dog had relations with her, but it doesn't take her away from being, doesn't become a zona, she's even called a basula even. And the Gemara says, Amar Shmuel ulakohen gadol, that not only is he kosher to regular kohen, she's not called a zona, she's not even called a bu'ula, she's called a basula, and it's even mutter for a kohen gadol to marry her also. The Gemara just sums up, as if to say that Rebbe said she's married to Kohen Gadol. There was no Kohen Gadol in the days of Rebbe. This is like a side point. He made Rebbe Kohen Gadol Miyava. There was no Kohen Gadol in the days of Rebbe. Rebbe is after the whole Mesa Mikdash. There was no Kohen Gadol. Ella, really Kohen Gadol. He meant to say that if theoretically she'd be kosher to Kohen Gadol, she's even called a basula also. So the Gemara just finished saying that the relations with an animal doesn't make her into a zona. And now the Gemara is going to say a pasuk for that. Amalei Rava Miprazakia. They changed the girsa. The Ravashi. What's the source for that? That ain't nus lebehema. That's what we're pasking. Ain't nus lebehema. Where does that come from? This pasuk says that it's also to bring as a korban one of these two things: esnan zona, mechir keler. The first thing esnan zona means a harlot's fee. That means if somebody wanted to have relations with a harlot and he gave her a sheep, let's say, as a fee in exchange for this nus, so that animal becomes possible for a korban. That's what the esnan zona is. So if this woman would want to bring a korban now, she can't use it. This animal becomes forever possible for a korban. What's a mechir keler? Someone went to the sheep dealer, animal dealer, and he wanted to buy a sheep. He had a dog. He said, "I'll give you the dog. You give me the sheep." So that's a cost. That's fine. Everything's nice, but you can't use that animal. That sheep is possible for a korban. That's called a mechir keler. In exchange, nothing's wrong. The first thing is a disgusting thing. This also is called something that's not right for a korban. The fact that it was bartered, it was exchanged.
Right?
Yeah, this is a process. This is a process in the Torah. Yes. I'm sorry.
A horse, if you
Oh.
bought it with a horse, or if you bought it with a.
I don't recall. I don't recall.
It's not a problem.
I
It's
don't,
just a
oh,
dog.
that's the dog. I don't recall if that's what you're saying. The truth is, I didn't learn the halacha. I don't know, but you're saying it doesn't mean any animal, only a dog. Okay, good. So now that's not our subject yet. But we need the pasuk. Utnan, how about the opposite? Esnan kelav umechir zona. See, the pasuk is esnan zona. How about esnan kelav? The pasuk is what's the esnan kelav going to mean? That someone gave the fee for the relations with the dog, not right. Of course, it's disgusting. He wants to pay somebody to have. Rashi says over here. A man gave the fee to the harlot not to have relations with her himself, but that she should have relations with the dog.
Oh.
As disgusting as it is, we want to know, does that become kosher, possible for a korban? So it says no. That's not what the pasuk says. The pasuk says esnan zona. It doesn't say esnan kelav. So esnan kelav will be mutter. Also the opposite, mechir zona. What's a mechir kelav? Mechir zona. That he had a shifcha, he owns the zona, and a man owns a woman, and someone gave a sheep to the owner of the shifcha. I want to buy her as a zona. So the money for the exchange of the zona. That's mutter. That's not included in the pasuk. The pasuk says esnan zona mechir kelav, but the opposite esnan kelav mechir zona is mutter.
So you can take that sheep.
That sheep could be used for a korban. It says, Lo savi esnan zano mechir kelav kito avas Hashem gam shnehem. Both of them are disgusting. But it says shnehem. That means only two, not four. Shnayim below arba. That's how we learn out that it's only also esnan zona mechir kelav. But the opposite, esnan kelav and a mechir zona is mutter. What do you see from all this? That the esnan kelav is not a esnan zona. From here, the Gemara learns out that the relations to an animal is not considered znus. Of course, it's chayiv skila, but you want to know the term. Is it called znus or not? No, ain't znus lo behema. It's an avera which is punishable by death penalty, the most severe death penalty, but it's not called znus. It has different agdara, it's a different definition. So once you see here that's not called znus, back to our subject, if a woman had relations with a dog, so it doesn't make her a zona. It doesn't make her a ba'ula. That's the end of the sugya. That's it for today. Really, the Gemara has two dots a couple of lines later, but really the two dots should be here. This here, over here begins a whole new sugya. So we'll put the two dots over here before the Tanur Rabban. And this one we could more or less erase tomorrow.
Waiting for you to make your own.
So to sum up today's Gemara more or less, I don't know if I can do the whole thing, but what do we have so far? First, we spoke about the Kohen Gadol, who's not allowed to marry a woman who's also to him. So does it have to do with the Erison or does it have to do with the Nisuin? Usually it does by Kohen Head, it doesn't happen. Nothing's going to happen between the Erison and the Nisuin. But if you figure it out, it doesn't happen. But in Kohen Gadol, it's a case that is to have a Ba'ula, only a Basula, so she could grow up in between. Like we said, Bulgaris is also going to Amir Zawi Paskin, so he's not allowed to marry Bulgaris. He had Erison, then she grew up, and now he has Nisuin. Is that okay? Is she in or not? The Gemara doesn't know. The Gemara does say that if he changed, if he became a Kohen Gadol, first he was married Erison to a Almana, and then he became a Kohen Gadol, that's okay. He can marry her still because she didn't change. But if she changed, the Gemara leaves it as a question. We don't know. That's the first sugya. The next sugya spoke about that a Kohen Gadol is not allowed to marry an Almana even if it's only from Erison. The Gemara first says that it's Pashut, but no, you might think you learn it from Tomar that Almana means only from Nesuin, and we learn out no, similar to Gerusha, just like a Gerusha is even from Erison, so to an Almana is even from Erison. The next point was about Bulgaris, Machlokas of Tanakama, Rav Meir, and Abelazar against Rav Shimon, and it has to do with the drush of Basula. What is the mashmos? What is the nuance of a Basula? Does it mean even excluding a Bulgaris or not? And whatever that means, the word Basula is excluding from that. And that's Machlokas Rav Meir. And Rav Meir says at the end that Bulgaris is not allowed to marry, it's not enough of a virgin. And Rabbi Elazar Rav Shimon say that he may. I mean, passing like a married that are not allowed to. Like Kohen Gadol is not allowed to marry a Bulgaris, he has to marry a girl less than 12 and a half. And then we got into the sugya. Aga, we came to the sugya about Shalok Kedaka, and that's also Machlokas Rav Meir. Rav Meir says that he may marry a woman who would be a Shalok Kedaka, but Elazar Rav Shimon say not. And just to point out, but the Gemara says at the bottom that the Isser, that the din, that a Kohen Gadol, if someone, that a man who rapes a woman, he has to take her for a wife. So it won't apply to a Kohen Gadol, because whoever he's going to have relations with, he made her into a Ba'ula, and he's not allowed to marry a Ba'ula. And even Shalok Kedarka, that would be the question of Shalok Kedarka. According to Rabbi Elazar Rav Shimon, Shalok Kedarka also is going to be Yasa. According to Rabbi Meir, Shalok Kedarka is yes going to be mutter. So the case that a Kohen Gadol cannot marry is only if it's going to be if she's an almana or something like that. But otherwise, if he had a regular bia, also she's not a bula. But if he had a bia shlokadarka, he raped her with a bia shlokadarka, then he would be able to marry her, and he'd have to marry her unless it was an almana. Then he cannot marry her. Then the Gemara spoke about Rabbi Elazar Lishitasa that holds that a panei abala pnuya makes her a zona. How do you have a case that there'll be she'll be not a zona, and there is a bula. Every time that she's going to have relations with somebody, she became a zona, because even the panei abala pnuya is a zona. So the Gemara tries to find the animal, but the Gemara says no, an animal also it's not considered znus. It's also not considered a bia at all. It's not considered a bula. And mukasei tzlokadarka we're not going to say, because then every woman would be possible for a kohen. And the Gemara says, "Mama'enes," that's a case of having a bula without having znus, because she was married to her husband with rabbanan, so it's not called znus. And then when she refuses, so then she's not anymore married, and it's not almana grusha, and she still is a bula. After that, the Gemara brought the drasha.
It's as if she never were married.
As if she never was married. As far as marriage, she's not called a grusha, she's not called an almana. I didn't see it beferish, but I think she'd be allowed to marry a kohen also. She's not called a grusha and almana. To me, it takes
We
it
have
up.
the opinion, somebody said even a Kohen Gadol.
That's
That's something else.
that's by the animal case. But I think
Oh,
that
that's the animal.
no, she won't be able to marry a kohen because she's a bula. A bula she is.
She can't.
She's a bula. She's a bula.
But
So-
a Kohen,
But she won't be called a
Correct.
kohen. She's not called a grusha. She
She's not called a
Mion
grusha.
takes it off retroactively. I think we did have, I think we said that. I think we learned that already. That if the husband would give her a get, so then even though it's also only with rabbanan, the whole get is not the whole marriage is rabbanan, but that looks too similar. So we're not going to allow grusha to marry the kohen. But if she got mion, she did mion, so there's no way to confuse that with a get. It's not like you get it.
how does she do that?
She says, I don't want. I want out. So she leaves, and the whole marriage is dissolved. She does do it in
It can
front
be
of,
any time as long as she's not 12 yet.
right. So the eitzah would be if someone marries a ketana, he should give her a lot of lollipops until she's 12
Yeah,
and make her happy that she should stay until age. And it should be good to her afterwards also.
You should-
But then he has the choice of giving her a get. But if he wants to hold on to her, he has to make her happy until she's 12. Okay, and the next Gemara was the source. How do you know that Nibel al was kosher? The Gemara says a story that happened, and Rebbe says it's kosher. The Gemara said theoretically should be even kosher for a Kohen Gadol. It's not called znus, and it's not called a beula either. And the Gemara says the source is because it says lo savi esnan zona. We learn now that an esnan kelev is kosher for an animal for a korban, and that means that it's not called znus. The relation to an animal is not called znus. Of course, it's chayv shkila, but it's not called znus. It's something else. And as far as the zona that a kohen is not allowed to marry, or the beula, it's not called the znus. It's not called beula either. Yashikach, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yashikach. We'll be back in a couple of minutes with Tehillim. Today's Tehillim, right? Okay.
Rabbi Sitchin, do you know Yaakov Meir Man?
We just